Nintendo Cartridge Society presents NCS Classic Edition, The Legend of Zelda, Part 2. Welcome to Nintendo Cartridge Society. My name is Patrick Ellers, joined as always by my co-host Mark Mitchell. Mark, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm sick. You can probably tell.
Yeah, you got the sick that I had. We're not saying that I got you sick.
No, in fact, I don't think that's true.
Okay, well, good. Good. I'm glad we're not saying it then. Mark, we're playing The Legend of Zelda, the original Legend of Zelda, 1986. And we've just played through the first 3 dungeons. So we're going to talk about the game through the first 3 dungeons. So I guess spoilers for that.
Yeah, the third dungeon is like the crab thing, or not crab.
Yeah, it's like a it probably has a name, but it's got like little pincher faces on 4 sides of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you have to do these dungeons in the same order, right?
Not necessarily. So there's nothing that would have I mean, we could have walked to this dungeon first. There were no items that we got in the first 2 dungeons that made it possible for us to go into that 3rd dungeon.
So maybe we should clarify which 3 dungeons we did, or is this the order that most people play it in?
I mean, they are labeled when you go inside them as level 1, level 2, and level 3.
Gotcha.
So, and yeah, I think they are they're traditionally known to be taken in this order, but just that's a totally fair and good point that you raise. The first one we went to is level 1. It's just north of the starting point and like out on a little island that you take a bridge to.
It's the dragon is the boss.
Dragon's the boss. The map is shaped like an eagle. And then the second dungeon is the one where the map is shaped like a crescent moon. It's a little bit north and east, still in kind of a foresty area. And then level 3. And the boss of that was the Dodongo, who doesn't like smoke.
Nope.
Dodongo doesn't like smoke. Don't smoke in front of the Dodongo. And then level 3 is the one in the like the kind of brown forest south and west of where you start the game, with the aforementioned crab monster
And
boss.
it's not a swastika.
No, and yes, that's right. The map is not a swastika, which is true. It's the reverse of a swastika.
Yes.
But it took us less time to do this than I thought it was going to.
Yeah, and I was not playing particularly well, so it would have been even faster. It took us about an hour.
Yeah, that's right. So, okay, I think we will also be talking, I think, a little bit about Breath of the Wild, right? Because we've both started the game. I'm just freshly off the plateau. Mark is not off the plateau yet, so like no real spoilers or anything there, but like just heads up, we may talk about Breath of the Wild a little bit.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe broad strokes.
Yeah, I mean, but that just to say that like both the original Zelda and Breath of the Wild have this like thing where we die kind of regularly and are just like, okay, like we die because it's hard.
Yeah,
and there's going.
And there's nothing really. There's no real penalty for dying.
Yeah, that's right.
You're pushed back a little bit, like from the checkpoint or like the beginning of a dungeon.
Right. Yeah. I guess the big drawback is that like you don't have it doesn't start you off with full hearts when you die, which I guess makes sense that then you can't just come back swinging it. You got to like earn it back. How are you, Mark? You're driving on this one. How are you finding it so far?
It's super fun. Like we had talked about in the prologue episode, I didn't really play this until it was on the GBA.
Yeah.
And I haven't played it much since. And it's really fun. It's very forgiving. Like,
interesting.
Like it's challenging and I'm dying a lot from like the enemies, but it's forgiving in the sense that like you can't get lost in the dungeons.
Yeah.
You can't,
well, we've only done 3 dungeons at this point.
That's true.
And they're all easy dungeons. Like on the easier end of the spectrum. I think we'll hit points later where we do get lost. For full disclosure, we're playing with an overworld map that shows us all the things that like I half remember from being a child. but we're not so far we've not cracked anything for the dungeons themselves.
What I can't imagine is, as an adult, is playing this game without a guide, and so just walking around and burning
Every
every
bush,
bush.
yeah.
Like as an adult, that doesn't appeal to me in the slightest.
No.
I can imagine as a kid, that freedom would be amazing.
Yeah, well, and I mean, yeah, like imagine how great the feeling of discovery if you were just randomly burning bushes and then suddenly you got something for it. That's amazing.
Right.
And that's something I think that we're experiencing with Breath of the Wild now, where you're like, "Oh, can I go up here? Oh, can I put this thing in this other thing? Oh yeah, there's a Korok hiding in there." I feel like it's the same like sense of genuine discovery. Are you even with the with the map? Are you finding that it original Zelda feels like we're discovering things, or does it feel more like executing on instructions that we have?
Yeah, I feel like with the map, it's more executing on instructions that we have. But I'm fine with that.
Right. Yeah. So I mean,
Because and not to get too much into Breath of the Wild, because that's not really what the point of this is, but
but I think it is part of the reason why the original Zelda is relevant. So I think it's okay to let's not beat Mark. Let's not beat ourselves up for bringing up Breath of the Wild.
well, okay, so in Breath of the Wild, I feel like there are more visual clues, right? It does a better job of not leading you, but at least giving you information so that if you're paying attention, you're like, oh, I bet I can do this thing, right? It makes logical sense.
Yeah.
Whereas in The Legend of Zelda, burning a bush, all the bushes look the same. There's no reason to think that one bush would burn and another one wouldn't. Right? There's no visual clue, there's no audio clue, there's no like signifier anywhere.
There's no olfactory clue. Does it smell like you can burn that bush?
But you know what I mean? It's like it doesn't follow a logic the way the Breath of the Wild does. And again, so as an adult, I think sitting down and trying to figure out The Legend of Zelda now would be not as fun for me.
Yeah, it'd be too difficult or too frequently not rewarding.
Yeah, because it's would literally just be trial and error.
Yeah.
Like it would be, when you read about like QA testing for a video game.
Yeah.
And a lot of that entails just like running into walls.
Right. Seeing what you can break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what that seems like it would feel to me. Right? Where you're like, there's no real direction.
Yeah.
It's just me discovering it. And if I was a kid and I had a ton of time on my hands, then doing that would be awesome. As an adult, that sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah. No, I get that. And I am 100% behind using the overworld map. It makes it so much easier to so we farmed some rupees up top, right? So that we could get that candle, so we could get the big shield.
And we went through the desert to get the better sword.
Yeah. So up by the waterfall. And we do get we got it between levels 2 and 3. And it's nice in level 3 there's a guy in there that's like, did you get the sword up by the old man at the waterfall? I like that the game like points you that like at about that time it's like you should find this thing if you haven't yet. And I'm just glad that we did, because that almost feels like next time I play this game, I'm gonna make a point to just go for that sword right away, because there are no barriers. Like all you have to do is get there.
You would have to. So in the instruction booklet, does it have an overworld map? That at least has. The reason I'm asking is because if you encounter that old man who's like, "Oh, go to the waterfall,"
you just have to find.
You would just have to like find where the waterfall is.
Yeah. I mean,
which is not a bad thing. That's not inherently bad. Again, I'm all pushing this all through the filter of like being a horrible adult, where I'm like looking at the clock all the time, being like, oh my gosh,
Like,
I have to be somewhere in a
I
few hours.
gotta get out of here in 45 minutes,
Yeah.
guys. I got a hard out.
I'm fun at parties.
I was out to dinner last night and was feeling tired, and ended up bailing on my friends after like hanging out for an hour and a half, being like, "Well, it's 8 o'clock on a Friday night. I gotta go. I'm too tired to stay out." So yeah, I'm with you. Like, we're old lame adults.
What I am really enjoying is how satisfying the game still feels
Mhm.
for being fairly primitive. Like there was one point I turned to you, was like, "Oh, is this? When do we get the Master Sword?" Like, oh, there is no Master Sword,
Right.
in this game.
Master Sword has not been introduced into the series at this point.
And Sarah, your girlfriend, was asking about like, oh, how where does this fit in with like the canon? Like, how much of the canon had been established?
And there's like none. There's a story in the instruction booklet that says either you have to save the princess or restore the Triforce. I forget which. Maybe both. Who knows? And that's it. And then you're just off on your own. So there are very. It's cool how many of like the building blocks that are established in this have been like reiterated on, like the boomerang, or bow and arrows and bombs, or even like I think they're called moblins in this one, but they're basically bokoblins that were fighting in Breath of the Wild 31 years later. um yeah, so it's weird how much is there already and how much isn't there.
But it feels very. I guess this is like redundant to say because it's obviously heralded as a classic, and rightfully so, because it feels like Super Mario Brothers,
Yeah.
where um it's so satisfying,
Yes.
right? Like even though it's primitive and it would be iterated on better. Uh I guess I would say Link to the Past feels like Super Mario Brothers 3
Sure.
to me.
That tracks.
But and so Super Mario Brothers 3 is a more evolved version of Super Mario Brothers. It has more stuff.
Yeah.
It's prettier looking. But
there's like all of the elements for why it's fun are there.
and that's how I feel about The Legend of Zelda so far, where it's like, yeah, like the presentation of Link to the Past is better, but this game, the mechanics of it, the core mechanics, like the core structure is so satisfying as is. It's still a fun game.
Yeah. There's something really neat about fighting that first dragon boss. I mean, I know that you took kind of just the like stand in front of it and slash until it's dead approach, but like it's a very like tactile fight. And throwing the bombs in Dodongo's face. We managed to kind of blow through that one pretty quick, but like I don't know, there's something very like visceral about the combat challenges in the game. You're fighting those that might be dark nuts, whatever they're called, the guys with the sword and shield that you just can't attack from the front. And like my heart rate gets up a little bit while you're fighting them. Like it's a genuinely exciting video game experience, even though it's like I don't know, it's so simple. You move in 4 directions, you swing your sword in 4 directions. But there's just there's so much variety built into that.
Yeah, and none of the dungeons feel the same, even though they are the same.
Yeah.
Like there's enough
Same
variety so
music.
far. Same music.
Mm-hmm. Basically same graphics, just skinned in different colors, which is pretty cool. That's one way to just make the normal tile layout look different from one to the next.
The dungeons are where I feel like the discovery aspect that don't know that I would love in the overworld, because it's more contained in the dungeons. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, can I blow up that wall? Can I move one of these blocks to get a door to open? That part feels cool because it doesn't feel as overwhelming where it's like I have to burn every bush in this place. It's just like, oh, there's maybe 6 things max in this room that I might be able to interact with.
Right. I can maybe bomb one of those 2 walls. There's a block over there I could push, and then there's enemies.
Yeah, and if it doesn't happen, then you didn't spend so much time like going out of the way. So that's really cool, and that I feel like is something that hasn't been in later games as much. Like even Link to the Past, it's pretty clear where you can bomb because there's a
Yeah,
like the graphics make it clear.
right.
Um
Or you tap your sword at again, and tink 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 tink.
yeah. Uh and so even though that's like I'm probably a graphical limitation,
Yeah, probably.
it feels satisfying when you
Yeah,
discover those things
yeah.
because it doesn't feel
Mhm.
as difficult.
It's also it's just so neat that they're like because it's not obvious what walls you can bomb and what walls you can't. That um, it does seem like we're unearthing secrets when we do it. When we're like, oh yeah, I don't know, try it, and then it works. And we're like, whoa.
And you're saying like the rooms like aren't even up on the map sometimes.
Yeah,
And I feel like that's also different from how it is in later games, where sometimes you'd be able to see
Mm.
something on the map and you're like, I have to figure out how to get there
Yeah,
instead of just being it like, oh, I didn't. There's no way I would have known this is here at all.
yeah, exactly. Um, yeah. I think we're having fun so far, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Strikes against it. We had to force the positive comments when we did other M. Let's force some negative comments here um on Zelda. I'll start if you don't have anything. um it's a bummer to me, the beeping at one heart. um
Well, that's partly my fault
no,
because we
it's
were there
no.
a lot,
No,
but
but that happens. That always happens, though. Like the game, I think, is designed so that you're like just barely hanging on a lot of the time. Um, but that like the the beeping itself isn't so bad, but the fact that the beeping takes up one of the audio tracks, and so the music becomes thinner during the beeping. I like the music. I want to like hear the music, even if it's that repetitive dungeon theme over and over again. I'd rather hear that than hear like 3/4 of it and then beeps. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, there was another minor annoyance to me. There was like one point where we went into the room in one of the dungeons, like a secret room. The old man, I think it was the when the old man tells you to go get the sword,
Mm-hmm.
and then you leave to go to a different room
Right.
that you want to get to because it's like secret.
You have to, yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then you turn around to go back,
And he talks to you
and
again.
does. I mean, again, that's like so nitpicky,
Right.
and again, a limitation of the system. But that was kind of annoying. And even though it hasn't been an annoyance because we're using the overworld map,
Yeah.
uh, like having no direction on the overworld, right? No clues at all.
Yeah.
It I would find a little bit annoying. But on the other hand, I will say that you don't need any of the stuff that we've gotten in order to uh beat or play the game. Right?
Sure. I
Like you
mean, the only place I guess that I would push back on that is I think we've collected 3 hearts in the overworld at this point, right? There were 2 that we burned to bushes for and 1 that we bombed for. Um, and without those hearts, I think we would be having a lot harder time in
it
the
would be
dungeons.
difficult, but it
Yeah.
would be doable,
Sure.
right? Like so I think that's cool.
Yeah.
Right? And it has to be that way if you're going to have those secrets hidden with
Yeah, of course. Of
no way
course.
for somebody to do it. Um but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm struggling to think of anything else that I
Yeah, I think that's okay. And I mean, obviously, we're both being really nitpicky on that. Instead, it's it's an older game. It's not perfect, but it is a whole lot of fun. Almost surprisingly so. Like, um, yeah, I'm very pleased with the good time we're able to have with this game. So what do you think? We did the first 3 dungeons in about an hour. Do you want to do 2 dungeons up through level 5 and then do another episode, or do you want to finish the game and do another episode? There are 7 dungeons overall.
I feel like we could kind of just finish it.
Kind of just finish it.
Yeah.
All right, that's great. So are we done talking? Do anything else to add about our first hour or so with The Legend of Zelda?
Now I'm excited to play more.
Yeah, Mark, let's do it. Let's stop talking about it and just do it. So that's gonna be it for this episode of NCS Classic. Join us when you've finished The Legend of Zelda. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's a Creative Podcast Network?